Have you ever felt like you're doing everything right, being kind, understanding, patient, but instead of feeling fulfilled, you just feel tired, resentful, or quietly disconnected from yourself? Most women think feminine energy is just about being soft, kind, and intuitive. And when they hear dark feminine, they either romanticize it or completely reject it. What no one talks about is what happens when you're living in only one half of your feminine nature, and why so many women feel exhausted, resentful, or disconnected from themselves because of it. Today, I want to break down light feminine energy, dark feminine energy, and why embodying both is where real power lives. Light feminine energy is the version of femininity most women are taught to embody, and it's the part of you that is more socially rewarded. When you think about light feminine energy, you think about softness, empathy, compassion, people who refer to themselves as empaths, people who feel deeply, deeply for other humans, humanitarians, lightheartedness. That is all what light feminine energy consists of. This is the kind of softness you see in someone like Princess Diana, for instance. Princess Diana was adored because she was emotionally open, deeply compassionate, and instinctively nurturing. It's beautiful to see her son, Prince Harry, today, how he still talks about his mom, right? I don't know if you guys have seen how he speaks of his mother, but when he talks of her, he remembers her as this nurturing, loving, compassionate person. And I remember watching a mini doc on Princess Diana, and I think they gave a story of her confronting her husband's mistress. And she confronted the mistress, and the mistress turned around and was ready to kind of get boisterous with her, with Princess Diana, right? But instead of Princess Diana reacting aggressively, the mistress thought she was going to, she simply said something along the lines of like, "Hey, okay, this is my husband. Leave him to me." Basically, it was something along the lines of that. It wasn't exactly that, but something like that. And she was very elegant and very calm with it. She wasn't aggressive. She didn't try to start a fight or even an argument. And like as soon as she told the mistress that, she just walked and went back to the banquet or whatever they had going on. So most of us would not have reacted that way, right? You found out that your husband is cheating on you and you confront the mistress. I guarantee you it's probably going to go down a little differently, right? So I'm not agreeing with what she did, but her doing that is a good example to of display to show what it looks like when you have compassion and you're being thoughtful and you're emotionally intelligent and all of the things. So light feminine energy, very nurturing, highly intuitive, emotionally attuned. You're very emotionally attuned to yourself and to others around you. Your friends also know that about you. You're the friend who understands all of their friends within the friend group. You're good at analyzing them. You know when something is off, when there's a little switch in their tone, when it's time to give them gifts during their birthdays or like events like Christmas or something like that. You understand what gift to get them, and you're really good at personalizing gifts and experiences for people because you're just so intuitive and emotionally attuned in that way. That is light feminine energy. Light feminine energy is also receiving rather than brute force, right? Now, we can kind of compare that to its opposite, which is masculine energy, but the traits between light feminine energy, dark feminine energy, and masculine energy can sometimes bleed into one another, but they also can share traits within themselves. I'm sorry, traits within categories. So it's more so receiving. Okay, you're not the one pursuing, chasing. You're laid back in a receptive state most of the time. And it's not just from the opposite sex, like men. This is from everyone around you. This can be from strangers. This can be from even children. If you've noticed that there's a certain women that children will walk up to and want to randomly share a piece of their half-eaten lollipop with the woman, and you're sitting here scratching your head confused, like, number one, why does this kid want to share their candy? Because kids are not that good at sharing, right? They're still in their little stages of not understanding what being generous is. So there's grace there, but it's kind of interesting to watch. I've seen this happen before, but children are also really good at picking up on light feminine energy, um, and they're very attracted to it. Light feminine energy also creates connection and emotional safety. Again, going back to the children example, um, children can feel that connection. They just want to connect. They are not even cognizant enough to understand why they want to connect with you. They just do. Animals want to connect with you, even if it's an animal that's known to be more aggressive or not as friendly. Like, have you ever been out walking in the park and someone's walking their dog, and their dog all of a sudden wants to stop and like sniff you or like jump on you and play with you, and the owner responds in a way and says, "Oh, that's surprising. He usually doesn't do that." And you're feeling all good and stuff. So I promise, like, not to. It's not an ego boost, right? It is an actual thing. The animal can feel your energy. Animals are very electric in that way, especially like dogs, cats too, but more so dogs, because dogs operate more on the love frequency, and they're just so attracted to you when you're out just minding your business, walking in the park. Birds will come up to you. Strangers will sit next to you on a random bench and start telling you their life story, because your magnetic field is oozing that. It's oozing that safety, that connection. You're really good at maintaining your relationships, even with your family members and friends. You almost act like an emotional glue. That is all a part of light feminine energy. So, those are some of the more like healthy aspects of light feminine energy, right? And this energy, like I've said before, is the one that feels the most safe and rewarded. Light feminine energy without balance is like a house with no locks. It's welcoming but unprotected. Now, with you being such light and attracting so many things and people, like, do understand everything is attracted to light. So a lot of women would be confused as to why they attract certain people that walks up to them, and it's not something in your energy signature. It's just the simple fact that everything, whether good or bad, neutral, is attracted to light. So you notice a lot of that. So you really have to get good at protecting yourself and preserving your peace for that reason alone. Now, the more shadow side to the light feminine, it's choosing harmony or prioritizing harmony over honesty. Sometimes things need to be said, whether that hurts the person's feelings or not, because at the end of the day, it's about intention. Intention is what matters over everything else. If your intention is to help, or you're saying or doing whatever out of love, then that is, then it should not be a problem, right? You really have to train yourself into understanding that it's okay to shake things up and rock the boat. Another shadow aspect, being agreeable, being too agreeable. It's being constantly emotionally available. So you're also the friend that one of your toxic friends can call and speak to and just emotionally vomit on for like 2 hours straight without taking a breath. And the minute you try to interject and say something to give advice or maybe to discuss something about yourself, they immediately like either cut you off or state that they have to go and just kind of leave you there hanging. So that's important to put boundaries up there. So all, women with strong light feminine energy are often adored publicly. So think of someone like Jennifer Aniston. She's perceived as warm, agreeable, and emotionally accessible. People feel very comfortable with her. Now, if you know anything about human nature, one of the more dangerous things to do is to allow people to get too comfortable with you. There is power in discomfort to a degree. So, do you guys remember the black cat golden retriever trend that was going on about a year or two ago? And Jennifer Aniston was used as one of the examples to display what that looks like within a relationship because she was dating a guy. I have no idea who he is or what his name is. You can go look it up. And in their pictures, you can tell that she was more of the one who she was more interested in him than he was into her. And you can see that energy coming through the pictures. And there are people who dove a little deeper into their relationships background, and it was apparent how much she put into the relationship. She was definitely the one like putting out more, like a golden retriever, just super excited to be within his presence. And then they broke up. I'm not sure if he broke up with her, she broke up with him. Basically he got with someone else, another woman who was more in her dark feminine energy. And it's funny to see the switch in energy when he was in pictures with her, the new woman. You can see the energy shift. Like you can feel that he was most certainly more into her than she was into him. So this proves how the same man can be different in every relationship that he's been in, right? We've seen stories like that online of two women coming out, telling a story time on the same guy, and one story makes him sound like a hero and the other makes him sound like an absolute monster, right? So it's all about your energy, and that's what determines how people show up in your presence and how they show up for you. And Jennifer Aniston is a perfect example of what that, being too over identified in her light feminine, looks like. So you don't want to be limited by your feminine energy, right? You want it to expand you. So you don't want to over identify with it. You do need to come to terms with how to express it in a healthy manner. So you don't want to be fluent in empathy, but illiterate in self advocacy. So if you value connection, don't let it turn into becoming the person's caretaker. If you are very empathetic, monitor yourself and make sure that you don't self erase. You can be nurturing without being overgiving. Okay, you don't want, like, for instance, this shows up a lot in dating. I talk about this often. You should not be mothering your partner, right? That's very repelling to men because men don't want to be in relationships with their mothers. Even if he knows you're not his mother, your energy comes off like that. That's very repelling. And that is us being more within our mother archetype. Because as women, we have a lot of female archetypes that live within us and they show up at different levels of our life. Nurturing is a part of the mother archetype, right? Use that. If you have a deep sense to nurture or overgive, pour that into your pets if you have them, your children if you have them, or your house plants. Don't pour it into a man. That's one of the worst things that you can do. Okay, you can be graceful, but don't let it beat you into being silent. If you need to say something, you need to speak up. Training your voice is so important as a woman because we were conditioned to be quiet most of the time, right? Especially like growing up and such around adults or getting older. You probably had experiences where you felt your voice wasn't heard or that it didn't matter. You really need to train yourself out of that because it absolutely does. You need to speak up for yourself and for others, but that's another level. Okay, that's more into like the dark feminine arena, which we're getting to. So you can see how this becomes limiting when a woman is loved for being agreeable but not respected for having boundaries. Someone like Marilyn Monroe embodied extreme light feminine energy. although she was adored, desired, she was rarely protected. I mean, we can see this. Look at the amount of scandalous information there is about her out there, right? She did have moments of redemption and moments of rebellion within her career. Like when it came to body positivity, there was a time people were talking about her weight, and in an act of rebellion, she popped out in a bikini showing her more fuller figure. That's awesome. Love that. But majority of her career, there was a lot of scandal, right? And even in the way that she passed away, unfortunately, I would recommend that you go in and look into it. It was very sad. And it hurt my heart to learn how she passed away, and, coming to learn how depressed she was and how she felt that no one was there for her and how alone she felt. And just she felt like very objectified. All of that is also shadow traits of leaning too deep into your light feminine energy. You don't feel respected, you don't feel protected. So here are some other ways you can see that you're operating too much in your light feminine energy, right? You feel responsible for how other people feel around you. Okay, you almost become like a human thermostat for the other humans, right? You're constantly monitoring, making sure everyone's having a good time. If they're not, you're feeling guilty. If you're the more responsible friend in the group and you're having to watch over your super drunk friend who doesn't know how to hold her drinks and she's all over the place. And I remember having a situation like this with a group of girls I used to be friends with. This was many, many years ago. And I go over this story in my book a bit more in detail. I have a lot of stories in there, as a matter of fact, because I've gone through a lot, and it forced me to get into this work, which is why I'm so passionate about sharing it with other women, because it truly did save my life. But to make a long story short, these girls and myself and these girls, we decided to come together on a phone plan, right? And I was the responsible party, because if you've ever been on a phone plan with multiple people, there always needs to be one designated person. And they chose me, of course. And that's not surprising, because I was known for being the more reliable friend. So of course the first month's bill came and no one had their bill money except me. And then to not get the service shut off, I so generously paid everyone's bill. And that started to become a pattern. I would approach them about it and they'd say, "Oh, just give me until next week. I had some things come up this week financially, so just let me get paid in another 2 weeks, and like I got you or something." And I was, very gracious that in that way, the nice girl. And of course I want to be there for my friends, right? Like I want to make sure that everybody's good and everybody has their phone on. So yes, I let this continue for like a couple months or so until I realized what was happening. So instead of me voicing to them, "Hey, you guys really need to be responsible, you really need to pay your phone bill, this isn't fair," I know that would have gone right over their heads. So instead, I went to the phone company and I explained the situation. I don't know what, I think it was the guy I was talking to. I think he was actually like the manager of the store or something. And he so graciously understood my story, because normally they would not allow like you to break your plan no matter if the other people are not paying their bill. But I guess how I told the story, he was very compassionate and he allowed me to remove myself from the plan and keeping the other girls on that plan. And then when the next month came and the bill was due again, guess whose bill was paid? Basically, mine, right? And the other girls noticed because their phones shut off. So they were shocked and they were surprised and all of that. And guess what? I didn't have to say anything, I didn't have to do anything. They already knew what was up, right? So at that time, I was going, like, at that point of time in my life, I was also getting tired of feeling taken advantage of and my niceness to being taken for weakness. So that was me taking back my power and not being responsible for other people's feelings and their responsibilities. Another way this shows up is You explain yourself to avoid being misunderstood. You also notice resentment after you've already said yes. This used to be very common with me. Oh my goodness, the guilt I would feel from saying no. And if I said no, that would also replay in my mind. So I would just automatically say yes. So I don't have to deal with the pain of saying no. And then saying yes still has me in pain. So it literally was not making sense at all. So I had to learn, okay, to start saying no, no matter who was asking me. So, yes, light feminine energy is beautiful, but when it's the only energy you're allowed to express, it slowly teaches you to abandon yourself. And we don't want that. Now, let's step into the world of dark feminine energy. Dark feminine energy is often misunderstood because it lives in the parts of women we were taught to suppress. Dark feminine energy, when it's embodied, power. It's power that you can feel and others can feel around you too. It's when people approach you and they say things like, I don't know, you just, something about you, you just have that it factor. Okay. It's emotional depth. You don't enjoy surface level conversations. You enjoy the conversations that surpass surface level findings, right? You don't really like small talk like that. A minute conversation can easily turn into 2 hours. I know this because that is me. That's me all day. I'm always down for a nice deeper conversation. I love to explore. You love adventure. That's all dark feminine energy. Depth, anything that involves depth, especially emotionally and in within conversations. Dark feminine energy is also very still. Okay, it's discernment. It's like the cheetah, or think of the leopard centering themselves, watching their prey with very graceful, slow movements, thinking about their strategy on the right time to attack and when to restrain, and even determine whether the attack is even worth it. Dark feminine energy. It's enforcing your boundaries without apologizing or explaining why your boundary is in place. It's presence over performance. It's not feeling pressure to perform. You can be within an environment and not feel pressured to become the life of the party if that's not who you naturally are. There are people who are that way, whose personality is fixed within that way. Any party they go to, they're like the life of the party. They can get it started and they can keep it going. You know, you can be out to dinner with your group of friends and it's silent and you don't feel the pressure to break the ice. You allow someone else to take that position. Okay, that all of that, that's, you're not forcing yourself to perform. You are being present. That's all dark feminine energy. This is the kind of grounded power you see in someone like Rihanna. She doesn't rush to explain herself. She doesn't soften her presence, and she doesn't perform likability. Her authority is very internal. Okay, so how long have we been begging Rihanna for another album? Child, it's been about a decade, right? And no matter how much we beg and plead and get on our knees, the queen is telling us with her energy, no. Or she's going to do it when she feels like it, right? She instead is focused on building her brands, spending time with her children and her man, having even more babies if that's what she wants to do. She's more so focused on her family, and she's really not worried about what we're asking for. That's dark feminine energy. You don't move because someone says to move. You move because you want to. Because at the end of the day, this is your game and they're on your board. You're not on theirs. That's the position she's taking. So, hey, we may get an album from her one day, and there's a high possibility we most likely won't. And guess what? At the end of the day, that's okay. That's her being in her dark feminine. So when you are residing within your dark feminine energy, it's so necessary to learn how to harness this type of energy and not just your light feminine, because your dark feminine energy is what's responsible for enforcing your boundaries. You becoming still removes entitlement. It prevents others from feeling like just because they want you to do something that you have to do it. You have to retrain people to think, okay, that and if they ask you something, there is a chance that you're going to say no. And we know women like that, or we've seen women like that in our lives. There's people who are like, okay, yeah, I can go and ask so and so, but you know how she is. It's 50-50. She may say yes, she may say no, depending on her mood. Or like, we have to catch her at a good time. It's very safe to be known as that. I would rather you have a personality like that as opposed to the yes woman, right? You don't want to be the yes woman. So becoming still and not being afraid of making the moment awkward is a skill set. You need to learn and understand how to be still, okay? Get out of that anxious state to remove that entitlement from other people may have of you. Self-advocacy. My goodness. I had to learn for many years how to become my own self-advocate, right? Self-advocacy was very scary for me, but it's essential because self-advocacy restores balance, okay, within relationships, within your work settings, with strangers, families, dynamics, everything. Self-advocacy is key. A really clear example of this is Amorosa, our favorite. I know a lot of people don't like Amorosa's personality as much, but I quite admire her in many ways. Of course, you don't have to completely like everything about a person, but you can recognize traits about them that you do like and that you want to practice. We should be using women as our role models, right? Like when you're thripping, when you're flipping through a magazine catalog, that's exactly how I think about it when I look at different women as role models and embody after them. Okay, there are certain things about them that I like that I would like to borrow or take on and integrate that into my own personality. So with Amorosa, I love that she really doesn't give a damn and she speaks her mind, and she's amazing at advocating for herself. There was like a clip of her going around on TikTok that was iconic, and the clip was just moments of Amorosa advocating for herself with like Wendy Williams. Um, we all know the famous one, Savannah, slow down. She don't care if she was on national television doing that. She's like, you will respect me. I don't care what the setting is. I don't care what else is going on. You will respect me. So within her book, she tells a story of being friendly with her boss's executive assistant. Now, her and the assistant became very cool, almost like friends. And they would have drinks together after work. They would often speak with one another about their plans and goals in the break room. And it was going great for a while. The executive assistant was also responsible for payroll. And Amorosa started noticing that she was getting paid late. Like it would be 4 days, 7 days, 8 days late. And when she would approach the assistant would say things like, oh, we just had so much coming up this week. I promise I'll get on top of payroll and you'll be paid on time. And she gave her grace and said, okay. Now, this kept happening, of course. This kept happening, and the time frames started to become longer and longer before she got her checks. And one day she was tired of it. She approached the executive assistant, and the assistant started off with an excuse, and she stopped her. Amorosa stopped the the executive mid sentence, mid excuse, and said, "Now, cut me my check now." The assistant was so baffled and shocked because she was so used to seeing Amarosa's light feminine side, her warm side, being super friendly, being super graceful. So when she did that, she was taken aback. But guess what? Not only did she cut her check right then and there, she shows that she was always capable of doing it, but she was taking Amarosa's kindness for weakness and seeing how far she can go. Now, this was very important of Amorosa to do because, I mean, to have done, because that's how disrespect starts. It starts as a little tiny snowball on the top of the hill, and by the time it gets to the bottom of the hill, it's huge, it's gigantic, it's messy, and it's out of control, right? Instead of taking care of it when it was a little tiny snowball on the top of the hill. Like when you let disrespect go unchecked, it starts bleeding into other ways of the person disrespecting you. And I'm pretty sure that's what would have happened. The executive assistant would have probably started asking her to stay later than she normally does, doing things out of her pay grade or her scope. And you never know, right? So you always have to nip these in the bud. So Omarosa's kindness did for sure get mistaken for weakness, but that quickly turned around when she enforced her boundaries to restore order, even though it did risk ruining their relationship, which I think she said it most likely did. But hey, at the end of the day, guess what? If someone can't take you enforcing your boundaries and it's reasonable, was it worth keeping them around? Maybe not. Either way, you've won, right? So dark feminine energy for sure does not preserve comfort, right? It preserves respect. Now, when it comes to dark feminine energy, just like light feminine energy, there is a healthy side and there's also a shadow side. Healthy power is discernment with self trust. The shadow side of dark feminine energy is power without grounding. So, healthy power looks like clear boundaries. The shadow side, emotional shutdown. You don't want to enforce your boundaries to the point where you've built walls around yourself and no one can come in because isolation is the devil's playground. At the end of the day, we are humans designed for connection. You need people, and there's power in numbers, right? So never self isolate, never enforce your boundaries to a point where it's unreasonable. Make sure that it's healthy. Healthy power, self advocacy, the shadow side, toxic manipulation. This is very prevalent in the sugar baby narrative today. Yes, the shadow side to manipulation, we see it very much so when it comes to women dealing with men of a certain caliber or just men in general. There's a ton of advice online about this, and it's been going on for years. It started movements, the stay at home girlfriend trend, the sugar baby trend. Now, you manipulating a man to getting his resources, his finances, is not the best thing to do. And this is a hill that I will stand on forever and ever, right? I too have succumbed to this type of advice years ago when I first discovered it. And it ends very badly. Let me tell you something. When you're dating a man and all you're seeking is, all you are seeking are his resources and his money and all of that, right? It does two things. Number one, he will feel that he has complete control over you. You have to understand whatever men pay for, they see as their property. Their men are very territorial. And if he sees that he's paying and he's giving all of these things to you, he's going to expect something from you back. I don't care what anyone on the internet says that the opposite is true. It is not. If you study the male psyche, this is how they think. So if you dare step out of line or do start doing things that they don't like or agree with, they will so quickly remove that rug from under your feet. Okay, you would land on your bottom and on top of your head before you know it. It's such a dangerous position to be in. You can risk your life even being taken. Yes, this happens every single day. You should not rely on a man or only seek him out or manipulate him into giving his things. When a man gives you his finances, his resources, it needs to be his idea. Even if you've done things along the way to help influence him to get there, but you should never manipulate him into doing it, because he will realize. I don't know what the advice is saying, like, oh, just do this and do that and he won't know, and next thing you know, you have his wallet. That's just not true. Okay, so that's it right there. Okay, that's the first part. Learning how to have your own money at the end of the day is protection for women. It's important. It's important. It completely changes how he sees you. He sees you as capable. He sees that you can leave at any time the minute he acts up or gets out of line. That's very important to have within a relationship with a man. It doesn't matter if you're married for 10 years or if you're only dating for 10 months. The same rule applies. And the second thing is, when you're dating, you most likely don't, like, when you're dating for a man for just his resources and his finances, and you're manipulating him into getting those things, it puts you into a very feral energy. Okay, and he can feel that. He can feel that, and it changes how he views you. Again, he loses respect for you, and in the beginning he may, play it off very well. You may see his representative, but he knows at the end of the day what you're there with him for, right? And he will use that. Okay, he will remember that and he will use that, and the next thing you know, you're being disrespected and start experiencing all kinds of, the word rhymes with accuse, right? Because I don't want to risk this video getting flagged. But all forms, spiritual, physical, mental, emotional, all kinds of the word that rhymes with accuse. So that's those are some examples of toxic manipulation, right? Okay, we've gotten that. A healthy version of manipulation, we see this often with parents and kids. Let's picture a mom serving her kid veggies. What is their inherent reaction? Ew, no, I don't want to do this. No, mom, I hate veggies. And the mom has to find a way to get her kids to eat veggies, right? Because she wants her kids to be strong and healthy. So she takes the string beans or the green peas back, goes back into the kitchen, and adds maybe a cupcake onto the plate, right? And she designs the green peas or the string beans in a way that resembles the Hulk or something like that, right? She brings it back to him and says, okay, these green peas are the same green peas that the Hulk ate and made him big, strong, and healthy. Do you want to be big, strong, healthy like the Hulk one day? He goes, yeah, I do. And on top of that, when you finish eating those green beans, you get to have this super delicious cupcake after the meal. Do you think the kid is not going to eat it? Yes, he's going to gobble that up before she even puts the plate on the table. That food is that gone. The veggies are gone, right? That's a perfect example of healthy manipulation. So, healthy power looks like self leadership, okay? Not waiting for someone to tell you what to do. You are very self led. You can get the ball rolling on your own. You don't need an outside force all the time to motivate you to get things done for yourself. The shadow side of this now can also look like hyper independence, okay? And like we've discussed a little earlier, hyper independence turns into loneliness. So there needs to be a balance. You need to understand when it's time to ask for help. When dark feminine energy isn't integrated, it doesn't look powerful, it looks isolating. And isolation makes you look like a vulnerable target. Back to self advocacy, right? Because I didn't completely get to finish my thought there. Dark feminine energy teaches you to embody self advocacy. When you practice self advocacy, you stop hoping people will intuit your limits and you start naming them instead. That's usually where the pushback begins, especially from people who benefited from your silence. I learned this personally when I started self advocating within my own family. Coming from a Caribbean household, boundaries are just not a thing. So speaking up was immediately labeled as disrespectful. And I remember seeing a video years ago online of a boy. Well, he wasn't a boy, he was a man, and he was talking with his dad, and his dad was like in the kitchen, and he was telling his dad, his Haitian dad, that basically how he speaks to him sometimes hurt his feelings and makes him want to cry. This was an obvious prank. But the dad got so irate that he went upstairs, got a belt, came back down, and started whooping the guy's tail. And mind you, this was like a grown man, okay, a grown man in his 20s, because the dad perceived him saying that his feelings are hurt from stuff that he says or does as disrespect, which is nonsensical. So, anyway, what I realized is that speaking up for myself or on things that I'm not okay with does not mean I'm disrespecting my family or the people that I love. You know, I'm not refusing, I'm not rejecting them, and I just don't want to abandon myself, to keep the peace. I would rather shake the boat, have them understand where I end and they begin, and create a relationship of mutual respect from there. So sometimes healthy power will cost you comfort, but that doesn't make it wrong. So when you begin embodying dark feminine energy, right, you may get called cold at first when you stop over explaining. People will label you difficult and how easygoing you used to be, and now you're just this like rigid stick of a person when you start enforcing your standards. Or you may feel even guilty, really, for choosing self respect over harmony. Embracing your dark feminine does not mean becoming cold, calloused, or manipulative. You're not going to turn into a witch stirring a cauldron of rat spit, eagle eggs, and toenails, casting love spells and endless curses. It's healthy power. It's the part of you that knows when to say no and doesn't feel the need to explain why. Okay? This is why dark feminine energy is the energy that's misunderstood for the most part and not the dominant energy to learn, because it really can get uncomfortable. It's about breaking cycles, rebirth, enforcing boundaries, shaking up relationships that you really don't want to shake up because you do love the people at the end of the day, right? But understand that sometimes destruction is necessary to restore order. So the real issue isn't choosing between your light or dark feminine energy. You actually need both. If you've been listening to this video so far, I think you've probably already come to that realization. What matters is learning how to read the moment and knowing which energy to lead with. So, when the moment calls for light feminine energy, that looks like connection, openness, or if you're wanting to create warmth. Dark feminine energy moment requires boundaries, discernment, self advocacy. Integration looks like choosing consciously, not reacting automatically. Maturity in your feminine energy journey is knowing you have access to both. Now, what happens when the energies are not integrated, right? If you're over identified in your light feminine only, this can lead to self abandonment. If you're just in your dark feminine only, this leads to isolation, like we've touched on this a little earlier. Extremes feel powerful at first, but collapse over time. And let me say this, whenever you need to make a change in your life, and given the context here, let's say you are more in your light feminine and you want to learn how to embody more of your dark feminine. It is important, right, to go into the extreme. I actually agree with that. You should go on the complete other side of the pendulum, right? Swing all the way to that side of the pendulum, soak up all the learnings that you can about dark feminine energy, embody it, practice it, live it, eat it, breathe it. And then once you're at a place where you're comfortable with it, you need to swing the pendulum back to the middle. So that way, whatever the moment calls for, that will determine which way the pendulum will swing. And a perfect way to think about this, right, so that you have a picture, is like unintegrated femininity is like driving with only a gas pedal or only a brake, right? Just imagine you need them both. So, this is what integration of both of your energies look like in real life, right? It's being warm, but still having boundaries, right? You don't mind connecting. You don't mind also enforcing those boundaries when the moment calls for it. Like you need to throw them off, make them feel like, wait, I'm actually so used to her being sweet and nice. I did not know that she had this side of her. That's, trust me, that's very healthy. That's the kind of person you want to be known as. Integration also looks like compassion without over explaining. So you can be kind without justifying your boundaries, right? So you stop sounding like this. I'm so sorry. I just have a lot going on right now and I really wish I could help, but I've been overwhelmed and I don't want you to think I don't care. Stop. Integrated version. I won't be able to do that this time, but I appreciate you thinking of me. That's it. Nothing else. Integration also looks like self advocacy without aggression. This is a really good place to be, right? And this is the type of personality that scares people. You want to be able to, in a calm manner, advocate for yourself like Amorosa and completely throw the other person off, right? Without being aggressive. You're very calm in your delivery. You want to get there. Learn how to self-advocate without being aggressive. So, you don't become harder, you become clearer, okay? And your dark feminine is the side of your feminine energy that protects the light feminine, right? Because we need both of those energies to live a whole and complete life. Your dark feminine is like the protector so that your light feminine can feel free, light and just play. Okay? It needs that boundary so that it can have its full-on freedom. So ask yourself, what does this moment require? Not, how do I keep the peace? Not, how do I prove I'm powerful? You don't need to permanently live in either light or dark feminine energy. Okay? Light feminine energy teaches you how to receive, connect, nurture. Dark feminine energy teaches you how to protect, command, self advocate. Integration looks like being emotionally self led, energetically grounded, and deeply magnetic. And remember, you're not learning to become someone new. Both of these energies already exist within you. You are simply reclaiming the parts of yourself you were conditioned to suppress, whether that's your light feminine traits or your dark feminine ones. And once you've reclaimed them, the real work is integration, because mastery is knowing which energy the moment requires. Most teachings focus only on light feminine energy because it's safe and socially acceptable. But without integration, women either abandon themselves or harden themselves. Okay? And I can understand this to a degree, right? Because look at the information online. I think I've only come across two teachers in all of the years of my interest in these topics that actually teach what real dark feminine energy is. All of the other information online, it involves witchcraft, hoodoo, and dark arts of some sort, and that could not be further from the truth. That is honestly a perverted version of what dark feminine energy is. Dark feminine energy is actually very healthy and is required, okay, but it's very healthy in nature. So that's exactly why I wrote my book, because it's a masterclass on embodying healthy dark feminine energy without losing your softness and without becoming hardened. If this conversation resonated, it goes much deeper psychologically, emotionally, and energetically. You can find it on Amazon. So tell me, which energy are you learning to reclaim right now? Light or dark? And remember, stay soft where you can, stay powerful where you must.